to Circularity 24. My name is Nathan Rajendran. I am the Corporate Sustainability Manager here at Greenbiz, and I'm joined with Katie, my lovely co-host for Livestream Hub. Katie.
Hi, I'm the Director of Sustainability at Greenbiz, and this is one of my favorite parts because we don't even know what's going to happen. You know, we have like a good idea, but all of the good stuff sits on the other side of this conversation.
Yeah, and quite frankly, on the other side of this camera as well. You guys can't see it now, but behind us, there's about 1,000 people that are going to fill in this room. We have an amazing keynote lined up. The energy in this hotel and the energy around the conversations with Circularity have been so high. I feel like a lot of our Greenbiz events feel like homecoming in so many ways. You see so many familiar faces. It's a great place for people to just think and ideate about the future and feel inspired. Do you feel that, Katie?
Oh, for sure. I took a group on a run this morning along Lake Michigan, and yeah, I mean, people from all different organizations, joined by a couple of folks from the Netherlands. So, you know, people are coming from all over to gather with this community for Circularity. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I love that you did an organized run. One thing about, I feel like this event is that we have so many cool sessions and session types. We have a wellness program with your run. We have yoga going on. We have meditation, reflections. We also have a whole guided networking stretch for different communities to really take that fear out of networking. We have so many amazing breakout sessions, and most importantly, the keynote lineup is just incredible. I mean, what are you looking forward to, Katie?
I saw Naomi Davis in the lineup of speakers. I can't wait to learn more about what her organization does. I love people who approach things from a systems-based kind of thinking, and she's really working to help Black communities be resilient and be a place of joy and peace amongst climate change.
Yeah.
And that kind of thinking and action, you know, I want to see go everywhere. She has a Sustainable Square Mile program. Yes, sign me up. I can't wait to hear more about what she's up to.
I love that. I'm really interested in Teju, who's going to be speaking about, I think it's regenerative ecosystems and how they tie into regenerative circularity. That's going to be fascinating. I'm also always curious to see what John's wearing on the main stage.
Oh.
He's always sporting some circular shoe brand, which I think will be very, very stylish, as usual.
Yes, I had a sneak peek, and he might point it out later. But it's like a... I'll tell you. I'll just tell you. It is a purple, velvet suit, subtle purple, but the inside is lined in this cool pattern. And yeah, his shoe wear is always something circular for sure. I'm sure his whole jacket has a story as well. Yeah, he brings such good stuff to the main stage.
Yeah, he does. And it's not just the fashion that's circular at this conference. I feel like there's so much intentionality with how the food has been planned.
Yes.
And I think the re-cups is what I'm seeing.
Yes.
It's like the repurposed single-use cups that we can just return into their vesicles, and then they get to be reused, which I'm really excited about. And the food has been so good so far as well.
Yeah, it's wonderful because everything is very normal. I actually didn't have to behavior change anything.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful to see all of these opportunities in action live now, not aspirational future hopes, you know?
Agreed. Yeah, I think that's really the core central theme of this is actionable steps right now to make the problem, to really address the problems that we're facing. And with that, I mean, we're about to hear from this amazing keynote lineup.
I can't wait. Yeah, we're going to hand it over to the keynote stage. Get ready.
Yeah, tune in.
Please welcome to the stage VP of Circularity, John Schmea.
And I know that you'll find love. I will possess your heart.
Hello, everyone. File in. There's plenty of seats. Welcome to Circularity 24. I'm so happy that you've all made it here to Chicago to spend a couple days with us. And for you on the live stream watching, thank you for joining us. I know that everyone is incredibly busy, and taking 3 days out of the office is not easy, so thank you, thank you, thank you. We had a conversation planned on stage tomorrow to talk about braiding Indigenous and Western science together to move further faster. Unfortunately, our speaker for that had to cancel last minute due to an emergency. So with that, I'd like to acknowledge that the city of Chicago is located on land that is and has long been a center for Native peoples. The area is the traditional homeland of the Anishinaabe, or the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi tribes. Now, today on the keynote stage, we're really going to focus in on the key question of how we as individuals in this community can continue to fight for what we believe in, can maintain hope and motivation. You know, we're all working to influence organizations, both small and large, governments from local to international, in many cases our own coworkers, families, and friends, to do more to fight the existential crises the planet faces. These include climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, mass extinction, and the eventual end to Taylor Swift's Eras Tour. Tomorrow, we'll focus a bit more on the collective. In other words, how do we pool our collective knowledge, creativity, and experience to create a world that is more resourceful and regenerative? In the spirit of starting with that, let's think about these 3 questions today. How do we keep ourselves motivated? How do we find hope and celebrate the smallest victories or even the largest defeats? And how do we continue to push forward to fight for the future we want to see? To be honest, I don't have those answers, but today we're going to dig into this question a little bit with a bunch of people who are finding a way forward right now, right here. And in the vein of starting with the individual, let's talk about how much this guy, that's me in the year 2000, got wrong. We could start with the pose, the hair, the goatee. We could pick a lot of things out of this. It's a graduation photo, so forgive me, they made me stand like that. You know, we all feel like progress is really slow, but world-changing people, companies, products come along every day. For example, this guy had a Nokia block phone in his oversized jeans pocket, and he refused to send a text message. He had dial-up internet at his house. He may or may not have even been highlighting his hair. He was. Give me a break. It was the boy band era. A lot of people were doing it. I didn't have a choice. Anyway, he never would have guessed that we'd have computers in our pockets with internet faster than anything he'd ever seen. And he never would have guessed how much progress we would have made in the 24 years since this picture was taken. Things can and do change all the time. We're often just too tied up in today to realize that it's happening. Now, this was almost 25 years ago, and a lot has changed since then. Our lives have changed forever. And it's hard to imagine that our lives might change a lot in the next 5, 10, or 20 years, but they will. We have to believe it, and we have to push for the right change in that time. Now, I also wouldn't have guessed that I would know all the words and lyrics to any Disney princess movies. But I have 2 daughters, and so the Frozen movies play almost on loop in my house. And sure, everybody knows the first movie, but I actually really like the second one a lot. And in one Frozen 2 song, Princess Anna, you know, she thinks Elsa's dead. Olaf has melted. She's in a cave by herself, and she's lost all hope. And she sings a song with some lines I really like, and she says, "I won't look too far ahead. It's too much for me to take. But break it down to this next breath, this next step, this next choice is one that I can make." Man, if those aren't great words for anybody to live by, much less those of us trying to advance the circular economy, I don't know what is. The interesting thing is she goes on, though, and she says, "So I'll walk through this night, stumbling blindly toward the light, and do the next right thing. And with the dawn, then what comes next? When it's clear that everything will never be the same again, then I'll make that choice to hear that voice and do the next right thing." Now, oh, thanks. I wish I would have written that, but I didn't. Anyway, right now, our economy, from the perspective of circularity, is in some really, really dark times. We're far below 10% global circularity, and most measures are actually moving in the wrong direction. But we, as individuals and a collective who believe that the circular economy should be the default, need to take the next step and do the next right thing. How do we do it? Well, if you're new to this field, you can start by educating yourself on the principles and practices of the circular economy through reading, online courses, networking events, joining industry groups that are relevant, and just generally staying connected, up to date, and informed. If you're in a position of leadership, take initiative to assess your organization's current practices and identify opportunities to embed circularity. Identify and advocate for pilot projects and initiatives that can show that circularity works, and then work to scale. That scale is going to have to come with buy-in from senior leadership for people and dollar resources to get stuff done. This isn't going to be free. If you have a role in sourcing, product development, marketing, finance, legal, any other role at your company, you also have agency here. You can prioritize circular materials, product durability, repairability, and end-of-life considerations to minimize waste and maximize resource efficiency. Now, I want us all to walk away from this week seeing the successes we can have, understanding what barriers still exist, and also holding hope that we can accomplish our goals and things can and do change, and they need to change. So let's take full advantage of our time together to learn, connect, and walk away with that next right step that we can all take to move us towards a more circular economy. With that, I'd like to welcome our first speaker to the stage. Really excited about this. Naomi Davis is dedicated to self-sustaining Black communities everywhere. She is aiming to reinvent her childhood's sustainable square mile here in the age of the climate crisis. She is the founder and CEO of Blacks in Green, an urban theorist, attorney, activist, and the proud granddaughter of Mississippi sharecroppers. So please join me in welcoming Naomi Davis to the Circularity stage.
Greetings, cousins. How y'all doing? Welcome to Chicago, the land, as some of us call it, of the Great Migration. Yeah, I'm Naomi Davis, and I usually introduce myself by saying I come from white gloves and mud. The proud granddaughter of Mississippi sharecroppers who, like 7 million others, voted with their feet and moved up south for freedom and economic opportunity. And in terms of economy, and we're here talking about circular economies, we had a very, very dead-end economy we were moving from. And some of us moved under color of night, chased by torches and dogs. Some of us moved by train, the IC coming down downtown, dropping off just in the South Loop, just minutes from here. Some of us moved in by mule. Some of us moved by foot. But the idea that we were moving for a better way of life that lived not just in prosperity, but in the way we can be in community. So I am here to share with you our theory of change called the Sustainable Square Mile. And when we talk about thriving communities, and when we talk about all that isn't working in the world today, we gotta understand there's so much brilliance, so much possibility, so much power in our ability to be happy together in community. And how does that work at Blacks in Green? Well, we're the authors and the teachers of the 8 principles of Green Village Building, the Sustainable Square Mile System, and the 12 propositions of Grannynomics. Grannynomics, and where does that come from? That comes from my very own grandmother, whose laws of the household, which ruled our transactions and guided our values, were from a little place in Mississippi, not so far from where Emmett Till was murdered in 1955, a place called Minter City. And the 12 propositions of Grannynomics laid down the roots which are fundamental to our ability as we call it today, to live in a circular economy? How did people who had the least come together and live in harmony? How did people who were oppressed on the daily develop a culture where everything they ate, they grew? Everything they wore, they made. They thought that they were poor and discovered they were rich. That's what we're talking about at Circularity. What are the measures for wealth? What do we mean when we say that you are able to live sustainably in a circular economy? Well, what you're looking at here is my walkable village, and we often ask at the front end of our courses, our seminars, our workshops, where is your village? Where's your village? And we say that, and we don't tell people how to answer. We say that because we want to hear how people are contextualizing themselves. What does it mean to be an earthling? What does it mean to be an American? What does it mean to be, and you're from cities all around, what does it mean to be from your place? But specifically here in the age of climate crisis, where if you know what I know, you want to be near the people you love, you want to be strategic about your water sources, you want to be understanding how you can sustain yourself, your friends, your colleagues inside of a system that you can have some control over. So with the Sustainable Square Mile, and what you're looking at here is West Woodlawn, just a stone's throw from the Obama Presidential Center, the University of Chicago, but more importantly, a place that defined itself by how its heritage could keep it alive. So when people were coming by mule or by train or under cover of night, they were coming with a suitcase. And we used to do a show called The Suitcase. And what was in that suitcase? You open it, it was a family Bible, it was a shoebox full of fried chicken and biscuits and pound cake, but it was also those heirloom seeds. Those heirloom seeds, and how could we root ourselves in a new place and bring the traditions of the old place with us? And so the idea of West Woodlawn, which is a Great Migration legacy community, gave us the opportunity to say, we're going to create a place where African Americans can once again walk to work, walk to shop, walk to learn, walk to play, where the rate at which neighbor-owned businesses were created and sustained could be accelerated, where we could build the capacity of neighbors to own, develop, and manage the property in their neighborhood, and where we could remember and reignite the conservation lifestyle. This lifestyle that I'm talking about, which is translated from the grannynomics of the 1920s to the imperative of the 2020s, where we've got to have households and homesteads that can produce their own energy, grow their own food, clean their own water, and recycle their own waste. And in our Sustainable Square Mile of West Woodlawn, and in communities around the country that are leaning in and listening and looking for opportunities to replicate the Sustainable Square Mile right where they live, we are answering the call, and we're saying to you, what does it mean that a place can be governed by a few good neighbors who are coming together in harmony to create what you call here the circular economy? So we're looking at the intersection of deep culture and green neighborhood revival. The 8 principles of green village building are all about how a city can become a city of villages. And that means that we are looking at how we're generating and defining wealth. And the icons that you see on the screen here are icons that were selected with an idea of how to depict the 8 principles of green village building, which when you practice them in your walkable village, we say, and we're in the process of proving it now, that you will increase your household income via the new green economy, and you'll build an oasis of resilience against the harms of climate crisis. Again, right where you live. So you see a copy of local currency, the Berkshires. You see wave energy. One of the main civil rights movements of today, which we are actually tapping into and catalyzing, is energy affordability. Our second principle of green village building is each village produces and stores its own energy for light, heat, and transportation, and owns its means of production. And so the idea that we're making things like those beautiful quilts of G's Ben, we're growing our own food, we're remembering our heritage, we're creating hubs, green hubs in the hood. That little schoolhouse that you see is just so typical of how African Americans learned their way into freedom from the Deep South. And creating, once again, an oasis of resilience against the harms of climate crisis. So in our process, Black communities are financed to design, direct, represent, and benefit from economic development with success, again, measured by an increase in household income. Because as you are designing your circular systems, I want you to be thinking and solving for equity. I want you to be looking at what is going to help close the racial wealth gap as you're doing your work, because in the process of designing tomorrow, what we too frequently do is, as an afterthought and a footnote, figure out what the fix could be for African Americans. When in this world we are here to love each other, celebrate life, and create power from the God-given elements that we're endowed with, we want to say, think big, because we do. Thank you. What is that?
Thank you, Naomi. That was amazing. Wow. From one Chicagoan to another we go. Next on the Circularity stage, it's my great pleasure to welcome a longtime friend of Greenbiz and the Circularity community, Gary Cooper, PhD. Gary is the co-founder and CEO of Reaply, a climate technology company working to scale reuse and the circular economy by providing better visibility and utilization of physical resources. He also serves as the founding general partner at Long Jump, the most active pre-seed venture fund based in Chicago, designed to invest in the next generation of underrepresented founders and overlooked ideas. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Gary Cooper to the Circularity stage.
Is this working? Can you hear me? Such a COVID thing. I'm so happy to be here. So my first word to you is welcome. Welcome to Chicago. Chicago is my home. It's been the home for me for 16 years. I know there's some things that you all think you know about Chicago, mostly in this slide, right? We know about the Cubs and the Sox. We know about deep dish pizza, although I would tell you, don't go to Giordano's. That's what I would say. And of course, we know about the horrific winters, but it's a beautiful day in Chicago, isn't it? Yes. So one of my goals in this conversation, which I only have 7 minutes for, is to tell you about a few things you don't know about Chicago and how they might map on to all of our aspirations around greater global circularity. if you don't know, here's a weird picture of me. My name is Gary Cooper. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a startup called Reaply, as John was saying. And the last time I was on a stage this big was last year at the TED conference, where I gave a TED talk around how we might achieve more global circularity by creating lots of, maybe hundreds and thousands of local circular economies based in our cities. 5 years or so before that, I was very honored to give a talk at Greenbiz, although it was virtual because we were in COVID. And I was talking about how, from my experience as a neuroscientist, we might take neuroscience correlates to thinking about how to drive more circularity. And the take home there was connectivity, not direction. So keep the words local and connected in your minds as we go through this conversation together. Now, in order to kind of put that on a tapestry, I have another weird term. We're not going to talk more about neuroscience today. We're going to talk about quantum computing. But wait. So I am, when I'm not the CEO of Reaply, I am the vice chair of P33 Chicago. And I should tell you, this slide here was put here to kind of, I know John had already talked about the problems that we're having in global circularity. And this jersey that I'm wearing, the 90, is to show that we still throw away 90% of the things that we make. This is the problem that we all should be thinking about every single day. And so at P33, where I was kind of going, as vice chair, we are trying to make Chicago a tier 1 technology hub by 2033. About 100 years before it was, 100 years since it was during the World's Fair. Now, how are we doing that at P33? And this organization was founded by Penny Pritzker, who was the Secretary of Commerce and a president that I think we all know, a Chicagoan for sure. We're doing that through collaboration and convening folks. We're not making new matter. We're saying, what are the regional priorities? What could we actually do in Chicago to make it a tier 1 hub? And then find the people who might be in competition, who might not have ever worked together, and bringing those people together to solve big regional, national, and global problems. One of those, my slide tour. One of those is quantum computing. So in the Illinois region, we have 3 of the 8 Department of Energy quantum research hubs. They're spanning about 50 or 75 miles from each other. All right, so there's already a big investment in quantum research in Chicago before P33. There are about 12,000 employees, both in the private sector and academia, both also from an academic perspective in government labs, who've been working on this program for over 20 years. The problem was, none of the big universities were actually working with those Department of Energy labs here in the Illinois region. So what P33 did, with a few other friends, is we formed the Chicago Quantum Exchange with some of the players that you see here on this slide. And we were able to bring all the work these organizations are doing together in a non-competitive way to do something bigger for, dare I say, our world. Let me show you some of the early results from that. In just a few years, they've been able to acquire 27 contracts, over $50,000 in those contracts, and they estimate before the end of the decade, there'll be 30,000 quantum jobs here in the Illinois region. There'll be another 50,000 that support those jobs, over 200 new companies, and something north of $60 billion of economic output. Pretty exciting. And this has all just come from convening local people. So we at Reaply are thinking about how do we do that at scale and local regions, because our thinking is if we can make circularity local and regionally tight and connected and collaborative, we can do something like this Chicago Exchange is doing for quantum research. And dare I say, we have to fast. The EPA estimates that we have less than 5 years in Illinois before our current landfill are at capacity. And we all know where those landfills are. They're in places where we don't live. or we have the privilege of not saying. We have to do something about that problem. And so as you leave here, I want you to know that 40% of all government funding for quantum research is happening here in Chicago. I also want you to know that Chicago was the modern birthplace of architecture. Please, 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 if you have time, get out and see our city, especially with this weather. If you don't see the city, go see some of the museums. Our museum campus is unmatched in my opinion, and there are also helpful customers here at Ripley. And I would say also that this is a place where the first atom was split. A lot of really, really cool things happen in Chicago. But some cool things can happen in this room too. My team did an estimate, and there's over $218 billion of spend just in the companies that are in this room that could be put into a circular economy. I think a former president said, yes, we can, a few blocks from here. We are the we. We can make this change in the circular economy. It's not outside of this room. And so when I think about the we that sometimes don't get the headlights, I want to highlight a few Chicago companies that you might not know in our space. One and dear to my heart is a company called Microcycle. They're doing incredible things with mushrooms to help reduce landfill waste. Please find Joanne and team here at the conference. Another one you might not know, my clicker works for me, is a company called Waste Not Compost, where they're making compost accessible to every home and business in our city. If you see Liam, he's amazing. And of course, I'll spend less time on this, Ripley, a great company, and I think I know a little bit about it. So my call to action is, I stand here in what I think is the greatest city in the world, at a conference that I've been coming to for 5 years, which I think is the best conference in circular economy. And I say to you, people in Chicago are building a computer based on the principles of nature and physics. We can build an economy based on the principles of nature and physics if we collaborate more, if we convene more, and if we lean into the progress that we've already made. I thank you for your time, and go Bears.
Greetings, Senator Jeff Merkley here. My home state of Oregon could be called the first circularity state. In 1968, a man named Richard Chambers went for a walk on the beach. He found the shore littered with empty beer bottles. Disgusted, Mr. Chambers called up his state legislator, Paul Henneman, and brought him down to the beach to see the mess. That moment was the beginning of what became Oregon's famous bottle bill, the first statewide bottle recycling legislation in the country, and the first step toward creating a circular economy. When the bottle bill came up for debate in the legislature in 1971, folks said it had the most outside lobbying they'd ever seen. The bottlers and the canners fiercely fighting it. Well, times sure have changed. Thanks to the bottle bill, in 2023, Oregon had a 90.5% redemption rate. Consumers want circularity. And now, instead of being opposed by business leaders like all of you are helping to drive the success of our circular economy. Today, Oregon is one of only 10 states, red and blue, with a deposit return system. It's no coincidence that these 10 states have some of the highest recycling rates. States with a deposit return system recycle at a rate between 70 and 95%, while states without one recycle, well, about 1 out of 5 containers, or roughly 20%. 40 out of 50 states don't have deposit return systems. That's an enormous problem because we're producing way more plastic than we used to. Globally, more than half of the virgin plastic ever made over the last 75 years was produced since the year 2000. That's an explosion in plastic production. To give you just one example, in the year 2000, 8 billion plastic water bottles were sold in the US. In 2021, 86 billion bottles were sold. That's more than a 10-fold increase in the number sold. Meanwhile, recycling rates remain flat. So those billions of single-use plastic bottles are now polluting our world. And it's even worse when you consider that 90% of plastics are made with virgin fossil fuel feedstocks. And now, plastic pollution is everywhere, littering our environment, choking our waterways, killing our wildlife. And plastics don't biodegrade. They break down into micro and nanoplastics that scientists are finding everywhere, on top of mountains and at the bottom of the sea, in the food we eat and the air we breathe, and the drops of rain and even the drops of our own blood. And these plastics leach chemicals that are endocrine disruptors linked to infertility and reproductive health issues, chemicals that lead to weight gain and insulin resistance, chemicals that cause cancer. This is an unsustainable situation for our economy, for our planet, and for our health. We need to transition to a circular economy as quickly as possible. Here's what I'm doing to help. First, I held the first ever series of plastics hearings in the US Senate, including a hearing devoted specifically to building a circular economy. Second, I led a congressional delegation to Ottawa for the fourth round of the international negotiations on a global plastics treaty. Third, I introduced the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. My legislation will help us build that circular economy. It'll help do so by banning single-use plastics, prioritizing extended producer responsibility, creating a national bottle bill like the one we have in Oregon for all 50 states, and pausing new plastic manufacturing facilities to assess their effects on frontline communities. Circularity is good for our economy. The Container Recycling Institute estimates that a national container deposit return system would support nearly 100,000 jobs nationwide. And circularity is good for business. The U.S. spends $11.5 billion a year on litter cleanup, with businesses shouldering $9 billion of that expense. Circularity would reduce the cost of cleanup and make more money available for business expansion. I'm sure we can all think of better ways to invest $9 billion a year. There's a saying that waste is a design flaw. By that measure, single-use plastics are a massive design flaw. We learned in Oregon that circularity is built on convenience and incentives. If businesses like yours know that consumers can easily return and reuse containers, then you'll be willing to invest in reusable, refillable packaging, like our brewers in Oregon are doing with better bottles. And if consumers know that they can easily refill or drop off their empty containers, then they'll be loyal to brands that offer sustainable, circular options. It's a win-win. It's a win for businesses. It's a win for consumers who save money while saving the planet. Yet plastics were the big business of the 20th century. Circularity needs to be the big business of the 21st century. So thank you all for being leaders in building that circular economy. Working together, let's end wasteful single-use packaging. Let's pass the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, and let's build this circular economy together. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Merkley, for sending that in. I don't know if anybody noticed the aviator sunglasses in the background. That was a nice touch. So I am up here to talk a little bit now about Greenbiz, the organization that puts this event on. So we sort of center all of our work around corporate sustainability and moving corporations towards a more sustainable future. And around that, we have a bunch of really active networks and conferences and groups that come together regularly to try to solve problems within their own sectors, whether that's green finance, whether that's circular economy, climate tech, nature and biodiversity. And within that model, we have sort of three business units, right? We have our conferences. Thank you all for being here. This is amazing. I love looking out here and seeing all these people. So we have our conferences where we bring people together to talk and network and learn from each other. We have a peer learning network for large corporations and the people that work in them in sustainability teams to learn from their peers. It's called the Trellis Network. We have a booth in the expo hall if you want to check it out throughout the week and learn more about that. And we have our editorial coverage, where we cover the latest news in sustainability and news you can use to do your job better. And we're really excited about all of this work and the future of corporate sustainability and all of the different initiatives that we work on. One thing that sort of layers on top of all that I really love is our Emerging Leaders program. I had slides, and I completely forgot to do them. Sorry. Greenbiz empowers professional communities to confront the climate crisis. Here is our hub and spoke model of corporate sustainability with all these things around it. And there are those 3 business units that I talked about. Man, I really blew that one. But you saw them. That's all that matters. With that, I'm going to bring out one of my favorite people to talk about one of our favorite programs here at Greenbiz, the Emerging Leaders Program. And with that, I'd like to welcome the program manager of Greenbiz.org and the leader of our Emerging Leaders Program, Brian Lewis, to the stage.
What's going on? Ooh, okay, what's going on, Circularity? How y'all feeling? Good? All right, good morning, good morning. As John so illustriously mentioned, my name is Brian Lewis, and I have the pleasure of leading our work with Greenbiz.org, as well as our illustrious Emerging Leaders Program, okay? For those of you who don't know, our Emerging Leaders Program helps to foster a just and equitable transition by connecting and engaging emerging young professionals of color who are leading the charge in all fields of sustainability. And for each premier Greenbiz conference, of which this is one of them, we have scholarships for each one of our emerging leaders to fly to, attend, and participate in our conferences. So they get a full scholarship, full flight, and full attendance at the conference, and are prioritized and engaged in every way. And since 2017, we've actually engaged over 300 young professionals of color who are actively changing the world in which we live. I'm so very proud about that. And for this conference, I'm so excited. This is one of my favorite parts of this job, to introduce this year's cohort. For example, it's people like Tevin Hamilton, who hails from down bottom Louisiana, right? St. Louis, but comes from Cancer Alley, right? Has a focus on uplifting communities who are facing challenges from industrial waste and pollution. And it's people like Aaliyah Collins, for example, who does work right here in Chicago on the South Side, helping to build healthy and livable communities, especially for people of color. It's also people like Anjali, who hails from India, all the way across the world, who has now come to America leading global reuse efforts with Repurpose Global. There's so many amazing emerging leaders that we have as a part of this cohort, and I'm so excited to introduce them right here and right now. So please, if you wouldn't mind, we have our front row of emerging leaders. Would you mind standing and being acknowledged by our amazing Circularity 24 Chicago crowd? Please give them a round welcome to Circularity. And so with that being said, I think it's really important to acknowledge that none of this will be possible without some amazing, generous support from our sponsor for Circularity 24, Toms of Maine. And I want to tell you a quick story about Toms of Maine, but specifically about who leads their community sustainability initiatives, Michelle Waring. A couple months ago at Greenbiz 24, I put out a call to action, much like I'm doing right now from the main stage. I put out a call to action, letting people know what's real, that the work that we do, the diversity, equity, and inclusion work that helps to foster that next generation of young professionals, is under attack. And it's important that we use the collective force that we have in this room, the minds, the networks, and the resources, the dollars, to help make this work possible, not just now, but into the future. And I just want to commend Toms of Maine, and specifically Michelle Waring, for answering that call, because directly following that conference, she reached out to me and raised her hand saying, I will be the one to help sponsor your next cohort. And now we're here having our largest cohort that we've ever had. We actually have the first 3 rows filled with emerging leaders, and that's the call to action that I put out at Greenbiz 24, trying to see if we can get the first 7 rows. And I'm excited to present the fact that we're halfway there, okay? So I just want to mention that without Tom's of Maine, and specifically without you all, this work is not possible. So I want you to put up my slide right here. First and foremost, just acknowledging our amazing emerging leaders. You'll see their names presented on that screen, but I want you to take a second, and I really want you to take this second. Take out your phone. You see that QR code? Y'all see it? Point it at that screen. With technology, you should be able to click, and it'll take you to a link. That link is going to take you to greenbiz.org's website. On greenbiz.org's website, you're going to be able to see and connect with all of these amazing emerging young leaders. And I want you to connect with them, honestly, over the course of the rest of this conference. We'll have plenty of opportunities for you to make relationships. Some of them are looking for jobs. If you're looking for a job, can you raise your hand real quick? All right, Tevin, Arada, Celine, maybe, Sneak. Okay, so I want you to make sure that you connect with them on LinkedIn, hit them up on Hoover, and please, thank you so much for your generous support in advance as we lead forward into that next generation of a just and sustainable transition to a regenerative future. Thank you so much, and I appreciate your time.
Nice job, Brian. If I've said it once, I've said it a million times. The Emerging Leaders Program is one of my favorite things we do here. Also, I just wanted to very quickly acknowledge this amazing art on the keynote stage. This comes from a local artist, Cody Norman. It's all recycled plastics. He has built his own custom extruder for this material and built all this gorgeous art. There's some over there at the side stage as well. Amazing. Thank you, Cody, for getting the art here. All right, our next speaker is Mark Arman. Mark is the founder and CEO of Replenish, our material recovery partner for this year's event. Replenish, as you'll hear from Mark, is an enterprise circularity platform. I won't talk any more about it because I don't want to steal his thunder, but please join me in welcoming Mark Arman to the Circularity stage. There you go, sir.
Thanks, John. Good afternoon, everyone. So on October 29th, 1954, President Dwight D. Eisenhower spoke to a crowd in Detroit, Michigan, about his vision for a national interstate road program. While in the Army, President Eisenhower noticed this massive disparity between the U.S. road system and the German Autobahn system. The U.S. road system at the time was a patchwork of roads, both paved and unpaved, old bridges, low bridges, narrow passageways. While the German Autobahn system was this expansive network of roads that stretched across the entire country of Germany. In his words, we are pushing ahead with a great road program that will take this nation out of its antiquated shackles of secondary roads and give us the types of highways that we need. It will be a nation of great prosperity, but it will be more than that. It will be a nation that is going ahead every day. We are all here at this amazing event to reimagine and reconstruct our industrial metabolism to be more circular and regenerative, to redefine what prosperity is, and to push our businesses, our brands, our careers, our communities, even commerce ahead every day. But it is hard. It is hard because we are in the pre-interstate era of circularity, and we are all here to fix that. Our current trash system is fragmented, clunky, offline, and does a really good job of moving trash, not materials and products. Our current system will not bridge the gap and complete the circle. What we need is a national and international interconnected network and superhighway to move products and materials in a new way. A transformation that elevates the value of materials as well as the experience for all participants while driving down the cost the more brands and manufacturers use it, as well as tracking those products and materials from point of generation, your customer, to point of reuse, your supply chain. This is what we're building at Replenish. What an opportunity to connect with your customer at the moment of disposal, take back that product for proper recycling, remanufacture, or reuse, and engage with them in a new way. Your customer is now your supplier. And in fact, over the next few days, you will all be suppliers as well. In collaboration with Marriott Marquis and Greenbiz, Replenish is the material recovery and destination partner for this event. Our team is working alongside the amazing folks at Marriott Marquis to ensure every product, material, used food is going to be properly composted, recycled, or reused. We have brought along amazing brands and other partners to accept these products, materials, and food generated at this event to be recirculated in their supply chain or end market. And here's just a portion of some of those awesome mappings. We ask you to sort your materials in the specific bins provided. If you don't know what to do with them, just leave it on the tray. We'll take care of it. Or better yet, bring it to our booth, and we'll figure it out. Scan this QR code for real-time updates. We just did an update after lunch, and we'll be back tomorrow with another update. Thank you. Have a great event.
Thanks, Mark. All right, so make sure you're sorting those things into the right place. If we find out you're underperforming, you will be banned from future Greenbiz events. Right now, I'd like to just take a couple minutes to thank our sponsors. First of all, our foundational sponsor, Deloitte. Thank you for your continued partnership of all of Greenbiz's events. It's amazing to have you as a partner and a sponsor. Also, our premier sponsors, Dow and L'Oreal Group. Next, I'd like to thank our track sponsors. We have 6 tracks within this conference. 3 of them are sponsored, one by IKEA North America Services, LLC, one by L'Oreal Group, and one by Dow. We'd also like to thank all of our supporting sponsors, our contributing sponsors, our participating sponsors. You might not know, but our sponsors engage in many ways in our events, from speaking in breakouts to roundtable discussions to VIP events and more. All of our exhibitors are also sponsors, so be sure to check out the exhibit hall on the Grand Horizon Ballroom on the 4th floor at some point during the event and talk to them. Also, we have an exhibit hall quiz going on. I don't think anybody's won it yet, but if you win it, you get a free ticket to a future Greenbiz event, so worth trying it out if you have time. Also, thanks to our partners, our convening partners, our community partners. They help us develop content. They bring in experts. They promote our event. It's great to have all of you. We also want to put out a huge thanks to our carbon offset partner, Keynote, our media partners, our Accelerate partners, our sustainability partners. Thank you, thank you, thank you to all of you. Also, before we get back to the talks, we have 2 sets of sustainability awards being announced this week here at Circularity. The first is the Reuses Awards. That ceremony is going to happen in this room tomorrow from 2:30 to 4:30, so if you want, you can come check it out. It'll be great. Actually, Brian Lewis, who you just saw on stage, is going to be emceeing that event, so that'll be awesome. Second, a big shout out to our friends at the U.S. Plastics Pact and their award winners for 2024. In compostability, we had Life-Made Biofex. That's a hard one for me to say. A certified compostable resin made of renewable materials that can be used in a wide variety of applications. In recyclability, we had ICPG XPP Solutions, a recyclable polypropylene extruded roll stock to replace polystyrene in form fill applications. In refill, Good Filling Dispensing Station, a zero waste dispensing technology that allows consumers to use their own container. This can be used for solid and liquid products, home care products, beverages. It's a really great solution for refill. And then finally, reuse. We had IFCO's VMI for reusable packaging solution. This is a new vendor-managed inventory system for reusable packaging containers, mostly for food. So really excited about these Award winners, again, reuse these tomorrow. Let's give the US Plastics Pact award winners a quick round of applause. I don't have a lot of time to go into this, but this is a list of all the honorable mention runners-up in all the awards for the US Plastics Pact. Take a quick picture if you want to know who these folks are. They also have amazing solutions for packaging. Next, our next speaker on the Circularity stage, I'm excited about this one, our co-founder and CEO of Repurpose Global. Repurpose is the world's leading plastic action platform dedicated to bringing together brands, innovators, and policymakers under one roof to collectively combat the plastic waste crisis. With that, please welcome Svanika Balasubramanian to the keynote stage. There you go.
Right. Our story today starts at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, where for the first time at a global scale, we introduced a linear model of production and consumption. Take, make, dispose. Synthetic plastics blazed into existence, fueling historic economic growth. And then, about 20 years ago, the cracks started to appear in the system. By the early 2000s, we knew about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and a new wave of environmentalism was starting to take root. 5 years ago, we made some truly historic shifts towards a circular economy. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation, in a landmark move, set up the global commitment. And at the same time, at Repurpose, we were laying the foundations for our very first waste management projects at some of the world's most unprotected coastlines. The last 5 years have been remarkable. And that brings us to today. I am so honored to be able to share in this moment in time with all of you, standing at what might just be the most pivotal crossroads we might ever face. Because 5 years from now, we might all be working together, galvanized by a unified UN treaty. Or our governments might still be fighting over the definitions of upstream and downstream. 20 years from now, we might be sitting here celebrating the fact that we have eliminated the amount of plastic that is leaking into nature. Or, if current trends continue, we might instead have ended up tripling the amount of plastic leaking into oceans. Rarely in the course of human history has the impact on future generations been so dependent on the decision-making of a single decade. This is the defining decade, a window of opportunity, a sliver of time that will inevitably change the course of our planet's future and that of our species, and I do not exaggerate. We need to lead with urgency and pragmatism. But what does that actually call for? I don't have a single answer. We know there is no panacea, but I do have 4 requests. The first, in addition to long-term ambitious impact commitments and impact goals, we need private sector commitments for concrete financial investments. Because ultimately, an impact gap is nothing more than a financing gap. Whether we want to scale up pilot use cases of brilliant innovators, or we want to create internal supply chain changes, all action requires capital. And the UN Global Plastics Treaty can give us a North Star for us all to rally around, but what is it that will actually get us there? In our role as the conveners of the Innovation Alliance for the Global Plastics Treaty, Repurpose spent a lot of time last year with Earth Action and several other industry veterans trying to see if we could put a number to this goal, to a simple goal. And we found an answer. If we want to reduce the amount of mismanaged waste by 90% by 2040, we need to invest into our circular economy across the value chain $5.2 trillion. Annualized, that's about 0.2% of global GDP. It's a daunting number, but it's also in many ways an optimistic one because it is possible. For context, we call for 2.5% of global GDP to go towards climate action. And importantly, we need to be extremely deliberate in how we spend our time and our money, in looking for the specific outcomes that come out of every dollar invested and every minute invested of this defining decade. Which leads me to my second point. Environmental impact is often an output. Designing for people, designing for communities is the input. In many ways, I look around this room and I see a lot of us as public servants. Because designing a circular system is not just about reducing waste, no. It's about giving people practical, affordable alternatives. It's about quite literally changing the way how all of us go about our day-to-day lives. Let me give you an example. The southern state of Kerala in India has a chronic plastic pollution problem. It is slightly larger than the state of Texas by population and sits on the border of the Indian Ocean. It has a plastic litter index that is 3 times the global average, and a whopping 95% of plastic that is produced here was either burnt or dumped and found its way into the ocean. And for many years, many solutions were tried and they failed. Tens of millions of dollars were wasted. Why didn't those solutions work? Well, it turns out a lot of them were just starting by building waste management infrastructure, looking at the environmental outcome without taking into consideration the behavioral changes that were needed from the local communities to actually make the supply chain work. In 2020, Repurpose started Project Harakal in Kerala to tackle the same problem, but from a different angle. Instead of starting with buildings, we started with local governments, panchayats, self-help groups, local nonprofits. We spent many months getting buy-in from residents on why sorting, segregating, separating waste and waiting for curbside collection was not unhygienic, why it was worth the effort compared to just dumping it out the window. And here's the good news, it worked. In the last 3.5 years, Project Harakal has been able to bring dependable waste management as a sustained, dignified human right to over 600,000 people for the very first time. Thank you. And this important input metric, I'm proud to say, resulted in the doubling of the collection of low-value plastic across the entire state of Kerala. Environmental impact is an output, but are we designing for people? Are you designing for the communities that will be most impacted by your decision? Thinking global is thinking for the future. Our ocean currents, our leak packaging waste, they do not recognize international borders. The global south today, Asia, Africa, South America, represents 85% of the human population. So there is no way we can have a circular economy that only works over here. And I have a little story that I often think about around this point. When I was really young, I was growing up in southern India with my grandparents for a little while, and I had picture day at school. And my grandmother wanted me to look good for picture day. So she went to the store and she bought a single sachet of shampoo, a single 1 rupee sachet of shampoo that just had one use, one wash in it, because living on a retired public school teacher's salary in rural India, she could not afford to buy the whole bottle, let alone anything more expensive, even if it was more economical on the long run. These are the realities that we must be designing for. The Reuse Outcomes Fund, launched by Repurpose Global earlier this year, looks to take on these topics of just and equitable transition, because the future is reuse, and reuse needs to be global. Which brings me to my final point: radical collaboration over competition. Because impact is not a zero-sum game. There is no single answer that will pull us out of this mess. No, we need to create the space for all solutions to coexist in the right balance. In the words of my wonderful friend John Smeher, we cannot build for the lives of 8 billion people on this planet and take sides against each other. How we show up with each other matters. How we show up for each other matters, with exponential ramifications into the future. So how are you spending this defining decade together? Because the people in this room, all of you, hold the keys to the floodgates of change. And I wait alongside billions of people whose lives will be impacted by your decisions. We wait to rejoice in the waves of change that I hope you will create. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Editor-at-Large, Heather Clancy.
Hi. Come on, folks. Hello, everyone. I am excited for this discussion. We cannot go a single day without reading AI in some headline or another. And what does it all mean for our lives, our professional lives, and our personal lives? And what we're going to spend the next 20 minutes or so doing is thinking about the real-world applications in the circular economy. And I'm thrilled to have 3 founders here with me today who have great solutions for addressing just that. I am joined today by Arib Malik. He is the co-founder and CTO of Glacier. Zara Bibiabani, she is the CEO of In the Loop AI. And Greg, I'm going to say your name, Mulholland. Greg Mulholland, the founder and CEO of Citrine Informatics. Recycling, re-commerce, and reformulation. So what I've asked each of them to do as a start is talk a little bit about their solution in the context of a customer and how they would benefit, and to be as specific as possible. And Arib is up first.
All right. So for those who don't know, Glacier makes robots and AI for recycling facilities, MRFs, across the country, specifically to understand what is happening behind the scenes of our circular economy. What we fundamentally use AI to do is convert the physical into the digital. There's so much you can do with good data if you have it. As a business, you can be smart, tactical, thoughtful about your decisions. But we are transitioning at this moment from a world where a lot of the stuff that our companies produce or touch is physical and not digital. But AI today has the ability to transform that, to take the physical, understand it, and convert it into digital. What we do is we use images to understand what's happening inside of a recycling facility. And an example of how this might apply to folks in this room is that we have worked with, for instance, Colgate, who recently released a new version of the toothpaste tube that is made of full HDPE, as opposed to the traditional multi-layer toothpaste tube. In order to do this, though, you can't just make the tube and put it on the market. You have to understand what consumers are doing with it. Right? You only know really that you produce so much, that you gave it to this many retailers, but after that, what happens? And we were able to give them visibility into the recycling stream and help prove that yes, your consumers are recycling, that yes, this marketing campaign did actually affect consumer behavior, and help them actually make educated decisions that help them drive towards circularity as a result. That is what we're using AI to do, and there's a lot of opportunity to continue.
Zara, bring this to life in the re-commerce world.
Yeah, awesome. Excited to be here. So I am the co-founder and CEO of In the Loop AI, and our goal is to make re-commerce, specifically online re-commerce, not only pervasive, but also profitable. So some of the main issues in the space are the unit economics. And those unit economics is, it's hard to scale operations that are so time intensive and require so much attentiveness for each item without the presence of a product catalog. So what we do is we have a software that helps resellers or secondhand operations to automate the identification, itemization, and listing of single SKU items, specifically apparel, shoes, and accessories. So what that looks like is one of our clients is a massive seller on eBay. They have currently sold around 300,000 items, all in clothing and shoes. And they have a big team in a warehouse up in the Northeast. And one of their things that they were struggling with in scaling, because as you'll probably know or have experienced, many of the businesses in this re-commerce space are not supply constrained. There's more than enough in circulation. It's just about getting it QA'd, listed, and sold and shown to the right people. So they had some scaling challenges, and we came in to reduce the time it takes to generate a listing by 90%. Also, with the additional attributes that we were adding to each item, we were able to see a revenue uplift of about 15%. And going forward, they are now really excited to continue listing more and more items and reaching the customers that want to buy secondhand first.
Great. Greg, you handle a very different part of the process, reformulation. That's one way I'll think about it. What are you giving to your customers?
Yeah, so Citrine has been doing generative AI in materials and chemistry since 2013. We work with some of the largest companies on Earth to power both their circular and sustainability efforts as well as their product development efforts. And so in the sustainability world, we would take the products that Arib and his team are helping to get out of the recycling facilities, returning to chemicals producers, and it turns out that to take a plastic and make it into the next bottle or next tube or next tire that you want to make, you can't just use the same old recipe that you've always used. So we're working with one of the world's largest chemical providers. They make plastics, they compound plastics. And one of the big problems is they don't have scientists who have expertise in dealing with these recycled waste streams. They need to be robust because they're not always perfectly pure, no matter how good Glacier is. You'll sometimes get some other junk in there. And even if it is pure, you have different qualities of material that are coming in. And so we use AI to look at that waste stream, look at the recipes they're using, and help develop recipes that are much, much more effective at making that new endpoint product. We connect that circular loop. And so our platform, our AI approach, allows these companies to do that in 90% less time. So 1/10 the time that they would have taken earlier, and they can do it much more robustly. So they can scale the process larger than they ever could have, doing it in a manual way.
Now, we had the benefit of having 3 hours of discussion this morning in the tutorial, and one of the things that kept coming up was data, and what you take and what you don't take. So help the larger group here understand that challenge and how maybe they should approach their data if they're thinking about using AI. What are they going to get out of it, and what are they not going to get out of it?
Sure. So I think for people who are unfamiliar with how AI models are produced, data is so critical to making the model successful. Dirty data in creates a dirty model out, and we want to make sure that the data you're using, if you're providing data or you're building your own AI, you're really focused 2x, 3x on making sure that data is high quality. At Glacier, we have definitely experienced this where it takes a lot of effort to make sure that our cameras can actually identify things properly because so much stuff is hard to identify visually. You need to make sure and really, again, double down that effort to make sure data is clean. There are a lot of emerging technologies today that help you do that. And so you should be sure not to just try to brute force this, but understand what technology is out there to help make sure my data is clean. And I promise once you do that, you really see the returns in terms of your model's quality, in terms of what your AI can do for your business.
In the chemicals world, data is incredibly expensive. A single experiment costs thousands, tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on what you're doing. And so we don't have huge volumes of data. So there are ways to work at the low data limit in machine learning and in AI. And the way you do that is very often by integrating what other information you have. You don't need to learn all of chemistry from data. You can learn it from the chemists that are using it and working at these companies, these material scientists that specialize in these things. So where you have data, you should definitely take advantage of that data. You should invest in it. You should clean it up. But in the world of chemistry, very often, we don't have that data. And so we do our best to curate it as we go, and we make the most of the data that we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just one more thing. I think when you are using AI for yourself or for a business use case or assessing any AI solution providers to use, what's really important to inquire about and investigate is really what data has been trained to create those models. Because really what you are going to be getting as a solution is the output of an amalgamation of data that patterns have been formed. You know, if it's a generative model, meaning that new text or images are spit out as a result of your queries, it's all a result of what the data initially that was used for training is. So if you have the privilege of having large proprietary data sets, I think that is amazing, and you should really look into, hey, what does that mean for what our desired solution is, and how can we leverage that? If you don't have that, there's a lot of options for third parties, but would be wary to look at solutions that are very, very general, because again, they are going to have general outputs, and you probably need specific solutions for your use cases.
Mm-hmm. I would imagine that many of the companies in this room on the corporate side have some very strong IT policies, and they have to work with that team. So I'm curious, what stakeholders really should be involved in this discussion for those that are either trying to use an external tool or maybe thinking about doing a project on their own? What stakeholders should be involved in that discussion?
Yeah, so we work with companies that have tremendously intense, let's say, security policies. Almost everyone refers to the data they share with us as the crown jewels of the company. And so there are stakeholders across legal, IT, even the business unit heads are very often involved. But what's really important to understand is how is the data being used. In our model, we do not share data among our customers. So your data is as secure with us as it is in your own organization. And that's really important for us to guarantee. I actually think that in many cases, trying to build something internally presents a lot more risk, because a lot of folks within companies that are trying to build these kind of narrow one-off little models might be using tools that are learning from data, aren't real clear about that. You know, the early GPT models from OpenAI, for example, we're learning from your data, so you can't just kind of send it over the wall and hope it's okay. And so I actually think working with companies that specialize in this really lead to the best benefit in terms of data security.
Yeah. And I think just maybe a little bit of technical exploration for those who are unfamiliar. When you use data to build a model, that data is necessary for the training aspect of that model. That's how you build the brains of the AI system. But once the brain is built and you're actually asking the AI model to do anything, you don't need that input data anymore. In fact, you could actually return that or throw it away entirely once the brain has been trained. And so that's really important to keep in mind if you are working with third parties. There are definitely mechanisms to say, hey, you can use my data for training your model. You can use this sliver of it for validating your model. But once you're done, I want you to delete it. And that's actually very feasible. You do not need that data around for the continuing operation of these models. And that's just an important thing to understand when you think about what is data actually used for in AI.
But do be careful, because it's then embedded in the model in some way, and there are ways, if you're very tricky, to unwind a model and figure out what data was in there. And so if you let that model out of your sight, it is possible it can leak data.
It can be kind of a black box. I mean, engineers at OpenAI have said time and time again, they're not really sure what's happening inside. You know, like they can't really explain it. So yeah, there's definitely some complexities there. We handle way lower stakes data than that. But our main kind of stakeholders, our user buyers, our data science teams, we do, you know, often get pushback of wanting to build internally, which is a timeline that is just much different than what we have since we've been focusing on this. And then also operations, because we are in trying to make re-commerce more operationally scalable and reduce the cost and friction in the current processes. Sometimes a lot of things have to be reconfigured. Where items are photographed versus where a barcode is put on. So that is something that is increasingly a part of our process, is helping companies on the operations side figure out, hey, we have this computer vision solution. How can we embed it into your operational flow to get the maximum gains for your company?
Yep. Energy. That's the other headline we keep seeing about AI, right? So it takes a lot of energy for these data centers to run and train these models. So how do you talk to a sustainability team that's really concerned with their energy load and how they're going to use AI, and how is this going to screw up my my renewable energy story or my energy efficiency story? What's the counter? How do we get around that?
So I think understanding why these things take a lot of energy is really important, because not all AI models require a lot of energy. The ones that are, GPT-4o, the new one that just came out, uses a ton of energy, but that's because it's trying to do everything. You can generate videos, you can write theses, you can do all these different things, and so it's trained on enormous volumes of data using literal entire data centers. Yes, that takes a lot of energy. Our AI could run on an iPhone. It's not a high energy thing because the data is really small. And so when we think about how we're using energy, in my view, the way we talk to sustainability teams is how do we narrow in to use a lot of little AI models that are really powerful for specific things, but individually are not actually that energy intensive, rather than trying to train one super brain that's going to slowly take over the planet.
No shade on OpenAI.
I mean, their ethics team did just entirely quit yesterday, so there may be some question marks around that.
Maybe some shade. Yeah, just to add on to that, I think there's like two main factors. Is like if the models are heavy, which is a little bit of a nebulous term, but if they're heavy, there's a ton of data that needs to be fed to run them, versus if they're more lightweight, modular, meaning they were trained on a lot of data, but now, to Arib's point, they're able to run in a very light manner, very quick, and I think that's a major difference when you are looking to either build or purchase a solution.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, just to understand, right? When you go to ChatGPT's website and use it, you're actually not using that much energy. Again, a lot of that energy was in that training phase, but the actual usage is actually relatively low and frankly can live on anybody's phone. And so keep that in mind as you think about your energy footprint. If you are just piggybacking off an off-the-shelf model that exists, likely you're not actually spending that much energy doing that. But if you are building your own model or building something crazy large like ChatGPT, those models use 100 billion parameters versus a standard image detector like what we use is about 3 million. And so you can see just like the scale right there. Keep that in mind. And I think, Greg, you said it best, like use small AI for specific things. Don't use giant models that can do everything to solve easy problems.
And is that what all three of your companies have done to keep your own energy down? I mean, like,
and costs. Yep. It's very expensive. They'll go hand in hand, but yes.
Yeah, I think a basic engineering principle when you're building is always do the simplest thing to get the job done. And I think that applies to folks in this room as well, is use the simplest AI to do your work.
Okay, time for one more question. What's the first thing that any company thinking about using AI for something regarding circularity should do before they act? What do they really need to make sure to get their house in order? I'm going to go ahead with you, Greg.
Yeah, I'm going to take a contrarian, I think, perspective to what most people assume. Don't start with figuring out how to get all of your data to be perfect. Most of the data in your companies going back decades is probably not worth going back and structuring exactly right and doing all this perfect stuff. Start with a goal. Start with a narrow target and say, hey, I really want to achieve these 3 or 4 things. That's great. I'm going to use an AI, I'm going to find some experts to work on that with, and then I'm going to bring in the appropriate data and then expand programmatically. I've seen too many companies waste too much effort going back and trying to lay groundwork to boil the ocean, and I think we can use carbon to boil the ocean. We don't need to do it with our companies.
That's
Too dark?
That's a good one.
Very dark.
I would say, I mean, this is nothing revolutionary, and it's, you know, to your point, is just to go back to your top-line business goals. It can be really enticing to think, oh, I can use AI for this, and then X team can use it for this, and we can also use it to automate our, you know, our sales funnels and all of this. And while all of that may be true, you know, what are your what business goals are you really driving towards? And there is probably some pretty significant ways that you can use AI, or even just, you know, being smarter about data. It doesn't even have to be AI, again, because it boils down to having good quality data. Yeah.
I think that today, if it wasn't apparent to people, what AI is going to do a year from now is going to look radically different than what it can do today. And if you're thinking about a big corporation that takes a while to move, you really have to be thinking about the future, not the present. What that means is partnering with the right folks. There are so many companies out there trying to push AI forward in so many directions. And there is a right direction for your company, for your use case. The challenge is figure out that use case, as these guys just said, and then figure out what the future of AI is going to look like and how that's going to enable you. There are companies everywhere, some of them are on the stage, wink, wink, who might be able to help you actually drive in that direction. And so think about what partnerships might look like. Think about how you, as a powerful force, you guys have a lot of power in this industry and in this space. How can you drive forward AI to a place that is beneficial to your company, to our missions, our collective mission of circularity? Really think about the future, not the present. That's my advice.
Can I add one more thing? There's two ways that you can think about AI. One is efficiency. How do you make it you automatically write emails, draft presentations, draft press releases? That might be valuable. But don't forget that AI is going to be super valuable in increasing your top line, in solving creative and hard to solve problems, and optimizing across very large segments of things that a human can't hold in their brain. And I think that's one of the things that I see people struggle with a lot. It's like, oh, we're just going to use it to optimize supply chain or work on finance or do some like basically headcount reduction efforts. And AI is so much more powerful than that. It can help us solve some of our toughest problems as a society, but we need to let it. We need to invite it in to solve those problems with us.
Great. Thank you. Arib, Zara, and Greg, thank you so much for your thoughts. With that, you can go ahead and... As they leave, I would love to welcome to the stage our next speaker. She's going to be speaking about evolving brand trust in an age of climate anxiety. Please welcome Mignon Sanuta with Mattel.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here, to be back in Chicago, where I lived for more than 15 years. And I'm excited to be representing Mattel. We have a large cross-functional Mattel delegation at Circularity this year, so we're all really excited and energized to be here. And if you aren't familiar with Mattel before last summer 2023, that's understandable. But after that, I assume everyone is pretty familiar with Mattel, thanks to this lovely lady right here. So clearly, we have a knack for sparking timely, culturally relevant conversations. We're a leading toy and entertainment company. We have a strong portfolio of brands. In addition to culturally relevant conversations, though, we also have a deep legacy of trust. So we've likely played a role in many of your lives at key developmental stages. I mean, who doesn't remember racing a Hot Wheels down a loop-de-loop or dressing up your historic American Girl character doll? Or even waiting for your opponent to say Uno before you throw down that draw four. That's a really iconic moment. That's exciting. At Mattel, we're driven by our purpose to empower all generations to explore the wonder of childhood and to reach their full potential. And when I think about these brands, I think about legacy, I think about nostalgia, I think about these as companions, these games, toys, experiences. For so many of us, they feel like home, and it's really hard to imagine our lives without them. For me specifically, Fisher-Price played an enormous role in my childhood home. I apologize for this very terrible photo, but this is my adorable sister. And Fisher-Price toys littered our homes for my siblings and I, and they brought us so much joy over the years. As we've been hearing today, there are big changes that need to happen to help us evolve. And as my fellow speakers have talked a lot about, there's some big changes, novel collaborations, big ideas that are going to help us get to a more circular future. That hope is so critical, and hope can also be sourced by looking within. Sometimes it's the elements that are best known that are the building blocks towards that evolution that we know we need to achieve. And I think that one of the most important building blocks is trust. Because we, all of us, as consumers, are tasked with a lot these days. We're acutely aware of a global waste crisis that we feel overwhelmed by and frustrated by the lack of viable solutions at scale. There's also climate anxiety, which is now a literal health condition. And according to the Lancet survey from 2021, 75% of young people and children find the future frightening because of climate change. That's a devastating statistic. That means that 3 out of 4 kids and young people are literally afraid of the future when they should be learning, growing, and playing. So in this era of fear and confusion, consumers need trusted support and guidance. They need help to make better decisions. So how do we show up for our consumers in this unprecedented time, while also allowing them to have these toys and experiences that have shaped so many of our lives? This is where sustainable design and circularity enter. It's one powerful way brands can help our consumers be sustainability heroes. And it's one way that Mattel wants to empower our consumers and our fans in this complex, uncertain era so they can approach it with confidence and courage. At Mattel, we have an approach to sustainable design that begins with positioning each toy to meet a consumer's particular need. This allows us to design products starting with the why. So whether that need is emotional or more functional, and then how long we expect that toy or that product to be in play. This allows us to then place the product on a spectrum, instigating certain levers of circular design. So whether that is lower impact materials, ease of disassembly, new experience models for a toy. All in all, we have 8 to select, depending on where that toy lands on that quadrant. So for example, products that are more moment-specific, culturally relevant in the moment, they might be designed to excite. Products that are loved for the long haul, maybe they'll be admired on a shelf in an office like a collectible, those are designed to treasure. Products that are really practical, and they serve a certain developmental phase of life for a child, those are designed for engagement. And lastly, products that are tough and that are going to be loved for the long haul and hard are designed to be durable. And for my family, for decades and decades. My son's favorite toy is this Fisher-Price circus train that was first bought in 1978. It was well loved by my siblings, myself, my nieces, my nephew, and now it is a permanent fixture in my home with no sign of going anywhere. This is Mattel's legacy, and this is why so many of our consumers and our fans trust us with their most precious moments. And this is why we're working hard to build on that trust and to grow with our fans and our consumers. This is the new era of trust that brands must elevate to. They must step back from being the aspirational hero, and they must empower their consumers and their fans to be the hero instead. At Mattel, we're on a journey. We approach this with enthusiasm and humility, and we look forward to deepening that trust by innovating and partnering with our consumers, our heroes, for decades to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, everyone, we have one more speaker today. From building trust in Barbie to building livelihoods through regenerative agriculture, we go. Teju Adisa-Farrar is co-creator of the Black Fibers and Textile Network, as well as the creator and host of Black Material Geography's podcast. She was the inaugural co-managing director of the Fibers Fund, and now serves as the director of programs. Teju uses a global lens, focusing on local and regional strategies that produce alternative economies at community scale. Please join me in welcoming Teju Adisa Farrar to the stage. There you go.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Teju Adisa Farrar, and I wanted to start by honoring the Potawatomi and Miami ancestors who stewarded this land for centuries so we can all be here having these discussions. I'm here in two capacities. First, as the founder and co-creator of the Black Fiber Network, which is a global network of Black folks who use, work with, grow natural fibers, plant dyes, and artisanal textiles. We mobilize to create products in reparation of the earth and each other. I am also the director of outreach and programming at the Fibers Fund, which is an integrated capital fund that supports small to mid-scale U.S. fiber producers. So I'm here to talk to you about the earth and circular economies. And what we all know is that our planet moves in cycles. There is no waste in nature, and it ends and begins in the same place. That is what makes it circular. I believe that regenerative agriculture gives us strategies to better create circular economies that are based in environmental, cultural, and economic equity. And I believe fiber and textile production can illuminate how we can use these strategies and pathways. And here's why. Who here wears clothes? Napkins, wipes, tampons, carpet. Over 70% of the things we use on a daily basis have cotton in it, and over 80% of the things we use on a daily basis have fiber or textiles in it. And the economic foundation of this country was the cotton plant and plantation slavery. So the fiber and textile industry shows us a lot about our economy, about production and how that deals with land extraction, displacement, carbon emissions, environmental pollution. We have this whole sector of distribution, which talks about uneven access, labor exploitation, and then of course consumption, which we all do constantly on a daily basis, which creates geographies of waste, such as landfills, and in other countries like Haiti and Ghana, where our secondhand clothes hand up. And there's this idea of unlimited growth. But in agriculture, if anything grows unlimitedly, it's called an invasive species. So we're in this constant crisis of waste and an economic system that is linear. But I think regenerative fiber and textile strategies can start in the soil and end in the soil, and our economy can do that as well. And so I want to just define regenerative, because we come to these conferences and we think we all understand the terms, but this is how we define regenerative at the Fibers Fund. It is an approach that transforms current agricultural systems by centering indigenous, geographically specific practices that enhance and preserve ecological bioregions. This results in climate change mitigation, which we desperately need, restoration of soil and natural water systems, and thus an alternative regional ecology and economy. So there are some regenerative agriculture systems that help sort of preserve our ecosystems that I think we can use in circular economies. The first is to use as much of the raw material as possible, not only thinking about the production, but also the decomposition. Where does it start and where does it end, and can we improve its use? In terms of an economic model, that looks like retaining more value from the materials we use by reducing waste, if not eliminating waste, and thinking of ways we can use it in the primary use, a secondary use, a tertiary use, and on again until it can go back to the soil. A second strategy that is used in regenerative agriculture is having decentralized ecosystems. We know that biodiversity is not only natural to the planet, it is necessary in our planet. So having mycelial networks, other organisms, trees, and animals, and plants, and flowers all working together in decentralized networks, you create a more resilient agricultural system. And so in terms of the economy, what about supply networks rather than supply chains? When a supply chain, a link breaks, the whole chain is broken. But with supply networks, there are other economies that can come fill the gaps, other people and actors that can come fill the gaps, and it also honors this idea of nuance. Not everything needs to be the same. As we know, diversity is more sustainable. And definitely thinking about this indigenous practice of relationships. We are in relationship with and to the earth. We're not controlling it. It's not controlling us. And so when we focus on creating relationships in our economy, rather than incentivizing incentivizing profit, we incentivize continuity and equity that will change the way we relate to each other and our trade systems and our agricultural systems and our consumption systems. So I believe that learning from Earth-based systems alongside humans who have been most marginalized by our dominant economy, in this case, Black and Indigenous people, I believe we can build better economies and also save ourselves, because the Earth has been here for 4.5 billion years. It will continue to be here, but we will not. So I want to end by sharing some clips from my network, which we are building Black regenerative ecosystems locally based across the globe, based in natural fibers and circular economies. And here are some thoughts from us about this.
Right now, we're experiencing gaps in knowledge, gaps in access to resources, and gaps in connections with each other across fiber supply networks. For Black folks to be able to have agency and access and be able to create within our mind's eye, we need to be able to connect with each other. And the first step of that is knowing what's out there.
So being informed, but also sharing that information with like-minded individuals. And then by that, as a byproduct, we're going to be connecting and cultivating our own community and spreading that information around. And we all are thinking of ways that we can create an ecosystem amongst each other.
I grew up with my grandmother and her grandmother and her grandmother making quilts, crocheting, making rugs out of scraps, reusing, and it was part of our legacy. It's part of the ancestry of being from the diaspora, of being descendants of indigenous Africans who made textiles and grew fibers from their environment.
There's always been hardworking Black people on this land doing this work, and what I love about this particular network is that it is honoring that and seeking to make space for us to build together and to get the reparations that are needed, that are deserved.
So fiber and textiles are everywhere in our economy from the beginning of our economy, and if we're going to survive on this planet together in an equitable way, I believe there's pathways there to build better economies. So if anything I said is interesting to you, feel free to connect with me across the internet or connect with me while we're here. And I would just also like to say any economy invested in the genocide of children or families in Palestine or elsewhere can never be circular. Thank you.
Thanks, Teju. Who here wears clothes? Love it. That's it for today. Very quickly, just wanted to mention that we have an opening reception tonight up on the 4th floor in the Grand Horizon Ballroom, sponsored by Panasonic. Thanks for that. Please check it out, hang out, network, talk to folks. Right now, you've got an hour break to network and meet some new people. Don't miss that opportunity. We have one breakout session this afternoon. A lot of good content there. Please join us again tomorrow at 10:30 in this room, and we're going to talk about how we all put on our collaboration hats and work together to advance the circular economy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Hey everybody, we are back for the live stream, just finishing the keynote at Circularity 24. I'm Katie Ryan, Director of Sustainability here at Greenbiz.
And I'm Nathan Rajendran, Corporate Sustainability Manager here at Greenbiz.
Okay, so Nathan and I are going to spend a little bit of time talking about the keynote, and then we have some more interviews for you. So here's what stood out to me about the keynote. Svanika's delivery of the plastic crisis. I just thought she had great points that were critical to what is happening locally in India, and then also how that translates broader, like specifically designing with the user in mind and having environmental impact, be the output of that. I think it's just an important framing.
Repurpose Global's team is incredible.
Yes.
I was actually in India in December 2022, and I got to visit one of their sites in Chennai, which
Cool.
was such a crazy coincidence. I was there on a family vacation. But when I was there, they had such a focus on workforce development.
Yes.
Like, they hired so many women from the local community to address the plastic crisis, but overall the social crisis going on around lack of work and lack of ethical work in the area. So I thought that was amazing. And it was just really great to see her on the keynote stage as well.
Yeah, I mean, it ties into some of the things that Naomi Davis was talking about as well, about investing in the communities so that the dollars circulate within the communities to make sure that economic development, workforce development is happening locally, like hyper-locally in your village. Yeah, I think we can do it. I think we can do more of it.
I think that we can as well. And speaking of workforce development and all of that, I mean, we have an interview coming up with Fabiana after this, and she works for Goodwill of Delaware and was really focusing in on how Goodwill Focus is on workforce development and bringing sustainability literacy to their workforce, which is huge. And I mean, she's an emerging leader who's doing great work, and we heard from Brian on the main stage. As a former emerging leader myself from the class of 2020, the Greenbiz class of 2020, it's really great to see that this is the biggest cohort that we've ever had of emerging leaders at Circularity 24. And we're seeing such an advancement in Gen Z's workforce development as well. So it's just, it's great energy here so far and on the main stage.
No, I agree. I'm watching lots of people still having conversations about what the keynote was about. So people are kind of like gathered and clustering about what their highlights were. You know, one other thing that I noticed on the main stage, Gary Cooper, I thought really delivered too. I love somebody with a jersey with a hidden message in there, so totally dug that. So here's what's coming next for us. A few more interviews with some interesting attendees, speakers on other topics for circularity, and we'll get those started in just a minute.
Today, at America's beverage companies,
our bottles might still look the same,
but they can be remade in a whole new way. We're getting bottles back.
And we've developed a way to make new ones from 100% recycled plastic. MadeToBeRemade.org.
Beauty is a powerful force that moves us. That's why at L'Oréal Group, we create the beauty that uses 85% PET plastic packaging from recycled sources and 65% of our ingredients that are bio-based or derived from abundant minerals. Reusing or recycling 100% of our industrial water by 2030 and without animal testing since 1989. At L'Oréal Group, we create the beauty that moves the world.
At UL Standards and Engagement, we're working for a safer world. One that gives you greater trust in what you use every day. Because at UL Standards and Engagement, all we make is trust.
The world is moving quickly toward a more circular economy.
We help companies to develop circular business models and seize true first mover advantage in this rapidly emerging business priority.
Welcome back to Livestream Hub here in the center of Circularity 24. My name again is Nathan Rajendran. I'm the Corporate Sustainability Manager here at Greenbiz. So I'm really excited to be joined by Linton Taylor and Fabiana Otero. They are two of our emerging leaders from what I mentioned earlier is the biggest cohort of emerging leaders that we've had in Greenbiz history. So you guys are making history here. And you guys are the first of our many interviews that we'll be doing here at Livestream. So Linton, Fabiana, please introduce yourselves. Tell our audience a little bit more about what you do.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm Fabiana Otero. I am the Sustainability Manager at Goodwill of Delaware in Delaware County. It's a dream job for me. My background in sustainability, my first innate interest is in thrifting. Me and Linton have that in common. Thrifting and secondhand. I just grew up with that habit. That's how my parents raised me. And so having this opportunity to work for Goodwill and basically being the lead troubleshooter for how do we avoid putting anything into the landfill, whether it's plastics, metals, textiles, you name it. It's an ongoing math problem, and working with universities and partners to create solutions.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit backstage about how you did an MBA in sustainability and innovation. So I feel like this is a really perfect molding of like everything that you seem to really care about in a career. That's wonderful for you.
Thank you.
Linton, tell us, please.
Sure. So I am a senior sustainability strategy consultant at Deloitte.
Yeah.
So actually my career started off in risk.
Yeah.
And as I started to get more involved and knowledgeable of the sustainability space, I started to kind of like pivot in that direction. So what I'm really interested in and focused on is decarbonization and circularity as a way of achieving decarbonization, so reducing emissions, but also that physical impact as well, so diverting waste. It's funny because it's kind of like, not to be corny, but full circle, because my career started in risk, and as I got more involved in sustainability and have a better understanding of it, I have come to view sustainability as kind of like a climate risk problem. And so kind of blending those two skill sets together is what I'm looking to do, specifically for the fashion industry.
Yeah, I can. Okay, first of all, both of your outfits, incredible. I was looking at it backstage, just had to point it out for our live stream audience. And both of you, speaking of fashion, like seem to have a deep interest in that. Of course, Fabiana, in your work at Goodwill. Linton, we talked a little bit backstage, like you have always had a passion for this. In fact, your entire outfit is secondhand, which is amazing. So how does that show up in your work, and where did that passion come from? And another fully loaded question is like, how do you see that intersection of sustainability and fashion like going in the future? Like what trends do you see? What are you looking at right now? So we can start with the first one, which is how does that show up in your work?
Okay. I'll start and say that Circularity 23 played a big role for me in that I knew going into my MBA program, the Sustainable Innovation MBA program at the University of Vermont, that I wanted to come out of it and participating in a career with sustainable textiles, whether it's recycling, reuse, repair, whatever. And when I attended the conference last year, from there I just reconnected to all the leaders, Cynthia Powers, Natasha Frank, so many leaders in the ecosystem of fashion, to ask them questions, to be more knowledgeable what the gaps were, what a future in a career in sustainable fashion could be for me. And from there, it was just a domino effect of me talking to more and more people. And Goodwill came up a lot in that conversations with tons of these stakeholders. So I saw the opportunity at Goodwill of Delaware, got it, and I'm thankful to be in a company that supports sustainability innately and also just the progress of it. So yes, while I still deal with all sorts of different materials, textiles is a solution that we are, or textiles is a problem that we are trying to make sure that we have the most ethical approach of, the most efficient approach on, and that has a lot to do with the collaboration with local universities and accelerator hubs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure with Goodwill you see, I feel like a lot of people see Goodwill as that like end of the life cycle for their clothing. They're like, I'm just gonna donate and dump it and I'm gonna go and I'm gonna just assume that someone gets it. But the truth is a lot of the materials that you get are not very viable or something that you want to, bring back into inventory. And I would love to ask you after that, what happens to all of that material? But before we get there, Linton, I'd love for you to answer the question as well. Like, how does fashion show up for you, and how does it show up in your work?
Yeah, so it doesn't.
Right.
But that's fine. Like for me, like fashion was what brought me to sustainability.
Yeah.
Like back in college, you could find me wearing something from H&M at any point in time.
Okay, fast fashion lover. Okay.
Yeah, fast fashion lover. But as I learned more about the industry, that brought me to the unsustainable practices in the fashion world. And that's where I started to shop secondhand.
Yeah.
The idea of circularity never came to me.
Yeah.
But it's something that I've been practicing the whole time, right? So like things like recycling, reusing, re-commerce, which is a new term I just learned today. Yeah. These are things that we practice in our daily lives. but the idea of circularity is not something that comes to mind. So
yeah,
the idea of just wanting to, I don't want to say preach the gospel, but like spread that idea of circularity of how can you implement everyday daily changes to take climate action. This passion for fashion turned sustainability is what propelled me to kind of like pursue a professional career in it. Because as you can see, like in my personal life, I'm already kind of like making that change. So I've been shopping secondhand for the past 5 years now.
Wow. Been walking the walk.
Been walking the walk.
Yes.
And in the past, like 2.5 years, I've been pivoting my career to sustainability. And so I'm really trying to lay that groundwork for a future in my professional career in that space.
Totally. So for you, fashion was like the means and the mechanism into getting into sustainability, which, I mean, you've done successfully as a consultant at Deloitte. And you said you work a lot on strategy and that realm of sustainability, which is very impressive. So great.
Yeah, and the fashion industry is a huge contributor to global emissions,
of course,
and a huge polluter of waterways. So there's a lot of impact that can be made there.
Yeah, I think that fashion for a lot of people is like the gateway into getting an understanding into sustainability, because it really touches on that idea of intersectionality. Like the flaws we see in the fashion industry are human rights violations, ethical violations, breaking familial bonds, polluting our waterways, creating insurmountable waste that you probably see every day in your work. So yeah, it's something that our generation really has to deal with, and this idea of fast fashion is something that has really blossomed. I hate to use the word blossomed because it sounds like a positive thing, which in for some ways it is, right? Like fast fashion is accessible for so many people that wouldn't get access to certain trends and styles that we do now. But at the same time, there's a lot of detriment that comes to that again, our generation has to face. And for all of us sitting on this couch, I mean, we're all like young professionals that are emerging in our careers, and that is a whole feat in itself. What does it mean to both of you to sort of close off this live stream? What does it mean for both of you to be so early on in your careers, and what are you looking forward to in the sustainability space? We'll end on a hopeful note. Yeah. We can start with Fabiana.
I feel like I learned this or I had a professor in college tell me once that don't be so siloed in what you think you want to do in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, because the job field will change, opportunities will emerge. And so I'm just excited to continue to latch on to the new things that are out there, but also make sure that whatever I'm a part of is at the basis trying to make people's lives, solutions more accessible to those towards job skills, workforce development. So I think that's just the basis of my impact and overall.
Great.
Yeah, for me, I'm so early in my career, and to be still learning and growing every day. I think like being at a conference like this where I am connecting with so many people doing a lot of different things, my mind is, I'm still a sustainability baby, so I can just absorb and see what I can use to create better solutions.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
My name is Ben Patel. I'm the Chief Innovation and Science Officer here at West. One thing I think that's unique about West, we have science, digital, design, and automation that work toward problems.
Beauty is a powerful force that moves us. That's why at L'Oréal Group, we create the beauty that uses 85% PET plastic packaging from recycled sources, and 65% of our ingredients that are bio-based or derived from abundant minerals. Reusing or recycling 100% of our industrial water by 2030, and without animal testing since 1989. At L'Oréal Group, we create the beauty that moves the world.
The world is moving quickly toward a more circular economy.
We help companies to develop circular business models and seize true first mover advantage in this rapidly emerging business priority.
At UL Standards and Engagement, we're working for a safer world, one that gives you greater trust in what you use every day. Because at UL Standards and Engagement, all we make is trust.
Welcome back to Livestream Hub. I'm joined with Drew Wilkinson, one of my personal friends, a very good friend of mine, who I met at Greenbiz Net Zero and have honestly been loving following your career projection.
Thank you.
So Drew, please introduce yourself and then I will proceed to grill you.
Okay, I'm ready to be grilled. Hi everyone, my name is Drew Wilkinson. I am a climate activist, community organizer, and a co-founder of Microsoft's 10,000 member employee sustainability community. I was at the company for 7 years, but I now run my own consulting business called the Climate Leadership Collective. Yeah. And all I work on is employee engagement, so workforce activation to make sustainability part of everybody's job.
We've been talking about that a lot, actually on Livestream Hub.
Okay.
And Drew, you wear so many different hats. You're like ex-punk rocker, ex-Microsoft, current like employee engagement consultant, and founder, eco-pirate in the past. Like, can you, with all these hats, can you give us a closet tour? Like, what do you do? Like, what does life look like for you?
Yeah, well, I feel like I've lived a couple of different lives at this point, I guess. Yeah. So I definitely had a pirate hat for a little while. I was on board a ship with Sea Shepherd Conservation Society. And I had a mohawk for a little while, so I guess that was maybe my punk rock hat.
Okay.
But I don't know, I think there's actually a lot of common threads between all of it, or at least it's my life and my career, and that's how it's all felt. So in a funny way, the things that I learned doing direct action, environmental activism, doing community organizing in an underground music scene, all became things that were actually super relevant and useful in corporate life. And so I brought those skills to bear, and now that I'm running my own business, I feel like I have found this really beautiful sweet spot right between the kind of scrappy punk rock from origins and the corporate professionalism from the most recent era, and I'm like somewhere right in the middle now.
Okay, we love that. And something that is so, I feel like a common thread amongst a lot of sustainability professionals is that wearing of many hats and that experience that really blends into this like beautiful creation of what you do now, which is focusing on employee engagement and how to mobilize internal departments to help companies reach their sustainability goals, but also to help companies keep accountable with their sustainability goals.
Definitely.
And something that you've been noted for in Fast Company and other publications is like your work on growing huge workforce like activation around sustainability. So when you think about circularity, how does that employee engagement piece sort of come in for you?
Yeah, it's a super fascinating intersection. And admittedly, circularity is not my area of expertise. I'm here very much to learn from all of these wonderful experts. But when you think about most sustainability teams in an organization, they're chronically under-resourced. They don't have that much influence. They don't have that much power. If there is anybody who's responsible for circularity programs, it's one person maybe, or two or three. It's very, very small proportionally to the overall size of the workforce. And so when you think about that other 99 point whatever % of your workforce who aren't sustainability professionals, who maybe don't know anything about circularity, those are the people that are actually making the decisions day in and day out that impact your waste stream, your product design, your product development. You know, they have an enormous ability to actually help you reduce your overall footprint and create more circular systems. And so I think of that kind of intersection of employee engagement and circularity as a way to bring the entire workforce along on the sustainability journey, educate them, inspire them, train them, show them how the work that they already know how to do in their daily jobs can actually help the company achieve the circularity or waste reduction commitments or targets that they have, because most employees just don't know. Companies aren't doing a particularly good job of communicating to their own internal stakeholders what they're doing in this space and why, and then most importantly, what everyday employees can do to really accelerate that. So I think there's a lot of important work to be done to just get people to understand what is a circular economy and how do the decisions I make in my daily job ladder up to that and affect it.
I think increasing that climate literacy is such a missing piece of what a lot of corporations do. Because, I mean, there's one thing to externally talk to consumers about it, but it's so much more powerful when you have an employee base backing that up and doing that in their daily work. So if you were to, like, give a company 3 places to start, where would it be in the next 45 seconds?
Yeah, well, the first thing would be education, right? Because, like, as you said, climate literacy, sometimes called sustainability fluency, is not something that most companies really have developed for their own workforces in-house.
Yeah.
And yet all of us get trained on things that aren't part of our day jobs all the time. You know, like accounting or business ethics or whatever, compliance.
Of course.
So train your workforce on sustainability. If that's not something that you can develop homegrown, you can outsource that. There's a whole ecosystem of companies now that provide, such as mine. And Greenbiz has amazing resources on sustainability upskilling. So I would start with education, because until you can get your workforce up to a baseline of climate fluency, they're not really going to be that effective.
Yeah.
After that, I think just communicating from top-down leaders that every job is a climate job. Sustainability should be a cultural value, not an operational thing that just one team does.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Drew. This is so helpful.
My pleasure.
Where can we find you? Where can the audience tap into your resources?
I have a website, drewwilkinson.earth, and I'm all over LinkedIn, so find me there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.
Today, at America's beverage companies,
our bottles might still look the same,
but they can be remade in a whole new way.
We're getting bottles back.
And we've developed a way to make new ones from 100% recycled plastic.
Made to be remade.org.
Beauty is a powerful force that moves us. That's why at L'Oréal Group, we create the beauty that uses 85% PET plastic packaging from recycled sources and 65% of our ingredients that are bio-based or derived from abundant minerals. Reusing or recycling 100% of our industrial water by 2030 and without animal testing since 1989. At L'Oréal Group, we create the beauty that moves the world.
At UL Standards and Engagement, we're working for a safer world. One that gives you greater trust in what you use every day. Because at UL Standards and Engagement, all we make is trust.
My name is Ben Patel. I'm the Chief Innovation and Science Officer here at WestRock. One thing I think that's unique about WestRock is, remember, we have 4 innovation capabilities: material science, digital, design, and automation, that work together as one team, again, to solve our customers' most important problems.
The world is moving quickly toward a more circular economy.
We help companies to develop circular business models and seize true first mover advantage in this rapidly emerging business priority.
Welcome back again. I feel like I say that every time. And Marilla, I'm so thrilled to have you with us. To our audience, I'm speaking with Marilla Perkins from Conspirators. Please tell the audience what you do for work and what brought you to Circularity.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. This is such a treat. I'm the co-founder of Conspirators, and we sneak climate into culture by bridging the divide between social media creators and companies and nonprofits who are working in climate and in sustainability.
Wonderful. It's funny that you mentioned this. The conversation that I just had and the interview before that, we've been talking so much about workforce development, the power of communication and climate literacy in the sustainability space, particularly the circularity space. I think circularity is such a new term. Yeah. People are familiar with the idea once explained about it, but they don't really just know it off the bat. So what have you seen as successful tactics and successful opportunities that you've worked on?
Sure, of course. Well, I'm so glad that you said that. I think for those of us who are working in the space, we can at least admit that the climate crisis is in part a communications crisis, right? That that we haven't always done the best job of making the language and the behaviors really accessible or aspirational, right? And so prior to starting Conspirators, I was at a biotech company in sustainable fashion, and we really sort of struggled with how to make the language feel accessible and how to get people excited about it. And we realized that creators were a key element to doing that, and that them helping to get the word out was critical for scaling these sustainable solutions for the future. And so when we look at creators, they have kind of the holy grail, right? They have extreme reach, they have this amazing trust and deep relationship with their audiences, and they have the opportunity to engage in real time, which means they can kind of drip feed information. So it doesn't have to be a big press release. It doesn't have to be just one look at a website. It can be a little bit of an engagement every single day to help get people comfortable with this language and with these concepts.
Yeah, and this idea of creators and influencers it's such a new concept in terms of marketing and how humans communicate. I mean, I personally am very influenced online, but I follow.
You're not alone,
right? And I follow a few creators that I really trust, and I think you touched on that. It's about building smaller subsets of communities, really getting to know someone's personal life, someone's personality, someone's ethics and what they believe in and what motivates them. And I love that you're tapping into that. What are some success stories that you've seen between like creators and brands that you've worked with?
Sure, of course. Well, I think one thing that I wanted to talk about just as far as like creators and circularity are that I think creators can really help kind of break down circularity, which can feel like an abstract concept, in two ways. The first is helping to understand the life cycle of, all the products that we use. And there are so many creators who do this, especially in the food system, who are growing their own food, cooking with it at home, and then showing people how they compost. And so that like fully breaking down a life cycle, I think, is one way. And then I think the second is, remaking products on their own in circular ways. There's an amazing creator, Charlotte Rose at Second Life Studios, who, has close to 1 million followers who are watching her take existing garments and handbags and repurpose them for the future. And so I think she's taking this concept and making it feel really aspirational and exciting, because sustainability doesn't have to be a sacrifice. Circularity doesn't have to be a sacrifice. So
absolutely. One of my first interactions with the concept of circularity was through an influencer, through a creator, and it was someone that was really passionate, I forgot their name, but really passionate about the idea of repair.
Yes.
So she was like, yeah, I get my clothes tailored. When something's broken, I take it to a tailor and I get it sewn up. And I don't know why that was such a foreign concept, because so many people equate value, going to a tailor costs $25, I might as well just buy it new.
Yes.
But just seeing that done in action was something that was so powerful, and it seems like that's something that you really tried to work on.
Absolutely. It just makes it feel authentic. It makes it feel personal. It's almost as if it was your mom or your sister or a trusted friend who's like, hey, you know what you should do with that bag? Let me show you how to remake it, or let me introduce you to my tailor. So it just has a lot more influence, to use that word, a lot more influence in our values, in our understanding, and absolutely in our behaviors.
Thank you. Yeah, that's such a great way to put that. And I want to end by asking you, what are you hopeful about in this space? What are you hopeful about in, just little successes that you've seen in this communication and circularity intersection?
Yeah, of course. I think there's so much to be hopeful for. I mean, recently there was a survey that said 85% of creators want to talk about concepts like circularity, but many of them are scared too, because there are barriers. They're worried about how to be credible, or could it be divisive or depressing, or would their audience understand? And so I'm seeing organizations like Conspirators and others stepping into this space to really empower creators. They know how to be creative. They know how to unlock that resonant language, but they need the support of all of us to help do it in a credible way. And so I think that makes me really excited about the future.
I love that. Sounds like a perfect partnership. Well, thank you so much, Marilla. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. And just the way you communicate feels so warm and so friendly. And I really appreciate the energy for our live stream. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Great.